The following program is a presentation of WHRW's Public Affairs Department. The views expressed are those of the show's host and various guests and may not reflect the views of WHRW's management or of other WHRW station members. This program may contain frank language and/or material. Therefore, we advise you to carefully consider whether you or your children should listen.
WHRW Binghamton.
Hi, this is Emma Hunter, and this is the first episode of Weekday Wellness Update here on WHRW. It's going to be going on every Tuesday afternoon from 4 until 4:30 p.m. Again, my name is Emma Hunter, and I have a special guest today. Would you introduce yourself for us?
Of course. I'm Mike Leonard. I'm the Medical Director of Health Services at the Decker Student Health Services Center on campus.
Great. So, it's no secret that the flu has hit much of the nation, New York State, and certainly the Binghamton University campus. The CDC indicates that influenza activity continues to increase nationwide. And according to the New York State Department of Health, the end of January marked 6 consecutive weeks in which influenza activity level had reached the category geographically widespread. And then I know right here on Binghamton's campus, there was an email sent out maybe a couple of weeks ago at the end of January indicating that the flu virus had hit campus. So I want to get to that stuff first, but before we really dive into kind of the nitty-gritty, I thought we could do kind of a general overview of the flu. Does that sound good?
Sure, of course.
So what is the flu, and when is flu season?
This is a virus. It's a respiratory virus, and it comes during the winter months. We're in the midst of it right now in the northern hemisphere. It is very contagious. It spreads from one person to the next very easily, commonly through cough, sputum, hangs in the air for a short time, so you can breathe it in. Also, there can be contamination where someone may cough into their hands, they'll touch a doorknob, you touch that doorknob, you scratch your face, you could potentially bring it in with contamination that way. It's a rapidly moving virus in that within 1 to 3 days of introduction to the virus, you come down with the illness. And then you are contagious from adults, generally speaking, from 3 to 5 days, during which time you can spread it to somebody else. Sometimes children, it can last a little bit longer when they're contagious. But it can go rapidly through a room, certainly through a classroom. And we did put out a letter to the university community at the end of, I think it was the 26th of January, to notify everybody that it was there. Not only students, staff, and faculty because of the infectious and personal nature of it, but also to recognize that we really don't want students going to classes if they've got high temperatures and they're coughing, because it's likely they have influenza and they put others at risk.
Wow. Are there any kits that they could stop by and grab, any thermometers or anything, or do they really need to make an appointment if they're concerned that they might be showing flu symptoms?
Well, that's a good question. It is very important to do what you can for yourself. There's no question about that. Once you get the flu, it is pretty limited as to what we can do for you. Prevention is key as much as possible. It's very hard to prevent it just because of what I said is how it's transmitted. But to do what you can to prevent the flu, and that would be having an influenza vaccine annually, and to cover your cough, so that if you're sick, you're not spreading it into the air. To wash your hands frequently, and you can use hand sanitizers that are generally alcohol-based as well, so they're pretty convenient in that regard. And I think it's always important to have a thermometer to be able to monitor your temperature, because sometimes you can feel chilled and you won't necessarily have an elevated temperature, and it's really important information for a prescriber to know if okay, I have chills, and I think I had a fever, but boy, it means so much more when you say, I checked my temperature, it was 103, so that really gives us a lot to go on. So now, I guess I can move into what do you do if you start feeling sick?
Yeah. One note I would say is that, so I'm from the Department like the health education office below the Decker Center, and we have flu kits now that we've been assembling.
Oh, good.
Some of our REACH peers. So we have tissue packs, alcohol swabs, and like hand sanitizers. We do have a limited amount of thermometers, so you can pick that stuff up. So if somebody's concerned and maybe they need to wait a little bit to get an appointment, they could come down to us, get a kit, find their temperature maybe, and then get them on the way to getting healthy.
The problem with coming into the health service right now is that you're going to walk into a waiting area, especially during walk-in. We have walk-ins between 8 and 11 o'clock every morning, and there are many people who are sick. This really is, it's clearly an outbreak on campus, and the numbers are pretty striking right now. Just last week, we saw over 50 students with influenza.
Wow.
Yesterday, we saw 18. These are really high numbers for us. So when you walk in the health service, we have masks and tissues and hand sanitizers, but it doesn't look pretty in the health service right now. So I would say if you don't feel as though you absolutely have to come to the health service, especially if you don't already have the flu, it's probably better to say, okay, I'm going to get my birth control in a couple of weeks,
Sure.
Some of those things that you really aren't coming for illness per se. Because we have seen where people would come in for minor symptoms. I just have a runny nose or nasal congestion, and I'm wondering what I can do. You might check our website and find out what to do on our website rather than come in because your runny nose 3 days later may be a temperature of 103 and you're coughing and you're in bed. Even your hair hurts because of influenza.
And you mentioned, so it seems to me that there's walk-in hours from 8 in the morning until 11 in the morning, and then you have appointments reserved in the afternoon. Can flu vaccines be administered during both of those times, or how does that work?
Yes, it's actually, we have nurse appointments, and that's where flu vaccine can be administered. And there are nurse appointments, depending on availability of nurses, which is pretty good right now, both morning and afternoon. Once again, the nurses actually are watching the morning list. You can make an appointment, for in the morning with a nurse, and they actually are watching that so they can pull people out of the waiting room quickly, so they don't get exposed to the waiting room. You're safer if you come in the afternoon with a nurse appointment because those are all appointments in the afternoon. Appointments can be made in advance. Also, at 8 o'clock every morning, half of our appointments in the afternoon open up. So if you're saying, I really want to get to the health service, tomorrow afternoon, if you go right now and check, there's no appointments for the afternoon. I'm sure that they're all booked. But if you go tomorrow at 8 o'clock in the morning, each morning at 8 o'clock, about half the afternoon appointments open up to try to sort of gather those people who really need to be seen that same day. Now, I'm going to plug one more thing, as far as the flu vaccine. This Thursday, the 9th, from 5 to 7 in the evening, the health service will be open for flu vaccinations. We're going to have a number of nurses there. We still have about 300 doses of influenza vaccine. Any registered student can come with their ID and just swipe their ID, see a nurse, and you can get a free influenza vaccine. So I would say if you are thinking about influenza vaccination, if you want to get it on campus, it will be free to register students. This is not faculty and staff. This is registered students. Consider coming Thursday between 5 and 7 o'clock. And that way we expect it's all going to be healthy people just wanting to get flu shots. So it's going to be a good place to visit. Sounds
great. So one thing that I often hear is that people mistake the flu for the cold or the cold for the flu. What are some telltale signs that you might be crossing over into flu land?
I think characteristically it's going to be the temperature.
Okay.
It is pretty uncommon for just a respiratory virus, cold virus, to cause high temperatures. I mean, you might run in the 99s, you might sort of hit 100, what we consider low-grade temperature below 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit. With the flu, it's like nothing else, to be honest with you. People can tell me, Dr. Leonard, it was 3 o'clock yesterday that I got sick, and all of a sudden I was burning up my arms, my legs, my back, my stomach hurt, and my temperature was 103.2. I felt totally exhausted. Last night, everything hurt. I was totally fatigued. I couldn't sleep because everything hurt. It's like getting hit by a truck. And, yes, they do have a runny nose and a cough that can be partially productive, but it's that body ache and high temperature that is very characteristic, and the sudden onset of it. Like, I know exactly when this started. So it's once you get the flu, you know it. I mean, it's like, I remember, 2010, I had the flu. That's why I'm always getting my flu shot now. So, it's I would go by the body ache and the high temperatures.
And let's say I'm a student and, I'm eating lunch at 2:30, everything's fine, and then all of a sudden 3 o'clock rolls around. I am positive I have the flu, and I come and see you. Are notes provided to students to excuse them from classes, or how does that go?
I think it's a really good question, and the reason why we put out that letter to the university community on the 26th was to let professors, instructors, and students know that we're not going to be able to give notes for everybody because we are seeing hundreds of students every day. It just doesn't work. It's impossible. So if students do come in, we give them a copy of the letter that went out on Dateline, and they can sign a release saying the professor can call, to check with their permission. They can check their health record and be sure that they came in. But we encourage people to take the more mature route of caring for yourself, being advised by your instructor, or advising your instructor that you have a very high temperature and coughing, and it appears to be the flu. You need a few days off to get through it. Typically, the temperature elevation will start to break after about 3 days, and people know they're getting better at that point. But we tell people not to go to class until they've been without a fever for 24 hours. That's the safest approach. And very honestly, if you find yourself in the library and you get this temperature 103 and you start coughing, it's very, very likely you've got the flu, and you should get to bed. When you come to the health service, we can give you, extra Advil. We can give you, some of these papers I just talked about. We can commiserate with you for about 5 minutes, and we can document this all in your chart. But you will be more comfortable going to bed and taking ibuprofen and or acetaminophen, Tylenol. And what I do is I use both, to be honest with you, when I'm sick like this. And ibuprofen or Advil, you can take up to 2,400 milligrams in a 24-hour period of time. You can dice that up any way you want it. Most people will take about 400 milligrams every 6 hours, or 600 milligrams every 400 milligrams every 4 hours, or 600 milligrams every 6 hours. And then spacing between those, you can take 2 extra strength Tylenol 4 times a day. So you can actually devise it so that every couple hours, one or the other comes up. And pushing fluids and taking that, I would say, is your best bet to survive the 1, 2, 3 days of influenza, and then be glad that it's over.
And if I come in and, it seems that it's pretty obvious who has the flu and who doesn't, but is there any tests that you use to detect influenza viruses, or how do you know is it type A or type B? How do you do that?
When you're in an outbreak, it is very easy to diagnose the flu. You really don't even have to lay a stethoscope, although we do on the patients. There is testing, though. There is rapid testing that's available at the United Health Services laboratory. That's the lab that comes and picks up specimens for us. It's not a real comfortable test. It's called. We use a nasopharyngeal swab, so it's a very small, slender swab that goes into your nose all the way back to the posterior pharynx. So we just slip it in there until it goes bonk, and then we count to 3, and then take it out, and we drop it into a viral culture. And they can take that for rapid testing, and basically they do it every day, all the day. It's a stat testing, but because of transport, it's the next day that we find out the answer. We've had many. We've had probably a dozen by now that's positive. It's all been influenza A, one of the main strains. Now, we also, as we spoke before the program, we're a surveillance for the CDC, and we do send some specimens up to the CDC. It takes about a week to process, but they can actually look at the sort of the minutia associated with the influenza virus, and we actually do it for New York State and CDC because they monitor and they want to know if there's any shifting going on with the virus. So if we had one good customer the other day who said, well, I'd really like to know what it is soon, but I'll cooperate and the CDC can have a swab. So we put one swab up one nostril, and one swab up the other nostril. He was very cooperative, and but we don't ask of that, that of a whole lot of people. So.
And really, regardless of whether or not those formal tests are conducted, the treatment is often the same. Is that correct?
That's
there's not really much you can do except alternate the acetaminophen and the ibuprofen and sleep
Rest
and drink.
And fluids, yes.
Okay.
Unfortunately. Well, let me step back a little bit. This is usually what we do in the young, healthy adult population, with the exception of, and this is important, I should have emphasized this before, but people who are at high risk for complications, and they would include people with asthma. That's probably the most common potential, high-risk person on campus, but also people who may be pregnant and people who are obese and people who are on special immunotherapy. We have a number of people who really are troopers and are here, and they are undergoing chemotherapy as they're at school because they just don't want to miss anything, and they've got good guidance from their oncologist or whoever is prescribing. These people, if we see them within the first 48 hours, we can use antivirals. The most common one that's well known is Tamiflu. Tamiflu is an antiviral that's very specific for influenza, twice a day for 5 days. But in the healthy adult, most people don't recommend it. If people just say, I really want it, we can prescribe it. It's an off-campus item that you have to pick up. But it can also cause nausea and vomiting. And unless it's really sort of a shame as you person goes to the trouble of going off campus, getting the prescription, getting back to their room or their apartment, and then they take the medicine and they start puking, and you're saying, okay, well, that wasn't very helpful. It's worth the effort if you've got some of these risk factors. But in the young, healthy adult, and I think it's just, symptomatic treatment, as we've mentioned a moment ago.
So let's say I'm one of those lucky people that is walking around, seemed to be fine, but didn't get the vaccine yet. That opportunity missed me for whatever reason. I'm a Binghamton student. Is it covered by my insurance? I guess I have two questions. If I have the university health plan, is it covered? And if I am maybe still on a parent's plan, can I still get the vaccine for free?
Well, I can tell you for sure, you can get it free at the health service. That's one thing I can say for sure. But I would say because of the ACA policies, Obamacare, that's getting bombed these days, most of these are fully covered by most of those insurance companies. Now, there are so many insurance companies, I just can't say in absolute ways, but I don't think I've met a person who's gone into a pharmacy, it's available at pharmacies. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody having to pay any money for their flu shot. So I think that if it's easier to go to the pharmacy, you might give them a call and just say, I've got this insurance. Does it cover my flu shot if I get it at your pharmacy? That's probably the most available place to get a flu shot. But I can tell you, because we have the money; it's already paid for at the health service for registered students. If you come to the health service, we can give it to you as a registered student without any cost to you. That's excellent.
So I know we discussed at the beginning, I kind of talked about how the flu seems to be everywhere. Would you say that, is it really bad in New York? Is it really bad in Binghamton? Kind of what's the trend looking like across the nation for the flu right now?
Bad. It was bad.
Very bad.
As of a couple weeks, if you really want to dip into this information, there's something on the CDC site. It's called Flu, F-L-U, View, V-I-E-W, and you will get the whole shooting match there. And they will show you graphics and a map, and red means bad, and red is a lot, all over that map. And so it's very intense, and it's everywhere. So it's it's just a bad time for the flu. And it's every once in a while we cycle up, we'll have some lower years that aren't so bad, and probably our immunity as a general public drops a little bit. And I guess maybe that's what we're paying, the price for right now is there's just a lot going on. Now, it doesn't seem like it's shifted. It looks like the vaccines are still good. And you can see on the same page, the flu view of the CDC, that there's no resistance seen to the antivirals. And it's pretty much what they're, the 2As and the 2Bs, influenza viruses, we're coming up with the same. So it's, but I there's no way of getting out of it.
The outlook is bad.
The outlook for the next few weeks is not so good. Right?
And so what about this myth that I always hear that I'll say to a friend, did you get the flu shot? And they'll say, no, the flu shot will make me sick. Or the last time I got the flu shot, I got sick. So can you debunk that myth for me or break it down for me?
Well, if you come in tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock and ask the nurse for a flu shot, you'll probably get the flu, not from the shot that we gave you, but it's the guy you were sitting next to at the health service who coughed at you, and it's forget it, The people can certainly have a response to the flu vaccine. It is people have heard this before, I'm sure. It's a killed vaccine. It's just protein particles. It's not it's not the stuff that causes it to grow in our body. So it's injected into your muscle, usually into the deltoid, the upper part of your shoulder, and it absorbs there. And we have the best needles at the health service. There are good needles and better needles, and we have the best needles. Okay.
What makes them the best needles?
They are more expensive, actually. and of course, it might be our nurses. Our nurses know how to jab, and a lot of times you don't even feel it. At least that's been my situation. And but it's injected. It's about a cc or half cc. I forget which one. It's probably half cc of liquid. It goes into the muscle, and usually you walk out of there, and that's it. And they put a little Band-Aid over it, and you're good. What will happen though? The very next day, somebody will pat you on that shoulder, and you'll say, "Oh, I feel that," and then you say, "Oh, that's right. I got my flu shot there." So there's going to be a little bit of a reaction at the site that you'll feel for a couple days, maybe. Of course, maybe nobody's going to pat you on the shoulder, so you won't have to worry about it. So, sometimes people can get a low-grade temperature, and if you get a low-grade temperature, sometimes you might feel that body ache, and so you may, come to the conclusion, oh, I just had the flu or something, but believe me, it's much more than that. So I would say, now there is a live flu vaccine called the nasal flu, okay, but there were some studies recently that suggested that it was not as good a vaccine as the killed vaccine. So I believe it's still available, but the CDC is not recommending it first line. I think they kept it on because some people just don't want to get a shot, But it might be hard to find, very honestly.
Yeah, I was looking and preparing for this, and it said that it wasn't recommended for this particular flu season. So I guess you have to kind of just suck it up and get the shot.
I think that's the way it's going.
So your advice would be that if someone was interested in getting the flu vaccine and was healthy at this point on campus, the flu clinic is really going to be on Thursday. You said from 5 to 7. Is that right at Decker?
That's your best
bet. That's the best bet because
definitely.
Hopefully it's not going to be a bunch of people sick and coughing next to you.
Right. If you already have the flu, forget it. So, don't come.
Go to bed.
We can't help you. So, but if you have not been sick and you've just not had the chance or whatever, to get your flu vaccine, this would be a perfect time to do it. We'll be waiting, syringes in hand, to greet you shortly after you arrive.
And is there anything that students, if interested, would need to do before time or ahead of time other than bringing their ID with them?
Bring their ID. That's it.
Okay.
You need nothing else. Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. So I know we have like 5 minutes left. So before wrapping up, I just wanted to, I know we had talked on the way over a little bit about mumps and the fact that, and I know, how can we get this all in 5 minutes, but that mumps are here, or they're not in Binghamton University yet, hopefully. But it's been a bit of an issue, and any kind of words of advice in 4 minutes about mumps?
Well, it's probably more surveillance.
Okay.
If you are sick, mumps can be sort of like the flu. Typically, it's not as high a temperature, but it's sort of like a runny nose, cough, and irritation in the throat. But then all of a sudden, you get this big swelling on the side of your jaw. It's usually in the parotid gland, so it raises up the tip of your earlobe. Actually, it's sort of underneath the earlobe. And you look asymmetric.
Okay.
If you get one of these asymmetric looks, I would say we really need to see you, because New York State and other states, honestly, have had a big problem with mumps outbreak. And unfortunately, it has come despite people getting vaccination. But what's happened at Geneseo and New Paltz, and actually Oswego had a smaller number, they were put into outbreak status. New York State Department of Health is quick to respond, and if you are outbreaking, students who have been waived from the vaccine for religious or medical reasons are directed to get off campus for 26 days. It's really a big deal, and it really threw a wrench into the works at Geneseo and also New Paltz.
Wow.
So, but the only thing you could do right now is just to make sure your vaccines are up to date, and the majority of people are, because we have to monitor that very carefully and report on it, actually. So if you just are looking really weird in the mirror and you got this respiratory thing going on, a big swelling on one side or both, I would say you really need to be seen.
And a student could call the health center if they didn't know, maybe if they've been vaccinated, and let's say for religious purposes or for another reason they had not been vaccinated, they could come in for free and receive the vaccine at the health center.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Excellent.
Measles, mumps, rubella vaccine is also a free vaccine at the health service.
Excellent. So, I mean, any final words of advice, Dr. Leonard? I mean, maybe one more plug for this clinic if people are interested, or anything else you want to say?
Sure. Yeah. This Thursday, the 9th, at 5 to 7 o'clock at the health service. Students, just bring your ID, free influenza shots, and cover your cough, wash your hands, before eating, and stock up on Tylenol and ibuprofen if you need it. They're great products.
Perfect. So thank you so much, Dr. Leonard. I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge and your time with us.
You're welcome.
And remember, folks, if you're interested in learning more about the 2016-2017 flu and flu vaccine, you can visit the CDC's website. That's cdc.gov. And then Binghamton students can also call Decker Student Health Services Center at 607-777-2221. You can make an appointment through the online student portal or drop by during walk-in hours from 8 to 11 a.m. Monday through Friday. My name is Emma Hunter, host of the Weekday Wellness Update, Tuesdays from 4 to 4:30 on WHRW, and I'll see you next week.